All right, so 4.3 is on angle addition identities. You're going to want to have out your yellow identity sheet because we're going to be writing these on that sheet. So when it gets to that point, you'll want to have to pause. You want to have to pause the video so that you can write these down. So our learning targets is that we can use the angle addition identities to find the sum and difference of the angle values. So basically here, if you kind of look through this, and if you have out your unit circle and your yellow identity sheet, we'll be able to go ahead and find these values. So either looking at your unit circle or looking at your identity sheet there, let's see if we can figure out if these are equal. It says, does the sign of pi over 6 plus the pi over 3 equal? Can you just go ahead and distribute the sign through the parentheses there and get the sign of pi over 6 plus the sign of pi over 3? Well, let's see. First of all, let's just go ahead and let's find this value. And then let's go ahead and we'll find this value. And then we'll see if those two values end up equaling each other. So if we look at that, the sign of pi over 6 plus 3 there, what you need to do is you need to get a common denominator here. So the common denominator here is going to be 6. Well, how do we get 6 down here? We'd have to multiply this by 2. So up here I have 2 pi. Now I can simply go ahead, since I've got a nice common denominator there, I can write it down. I can add my numerators there. 1 pi plus 2 pi there is 3 pi. And then if I reduce down that fraction there, 3 goes into 3 there, 3 goes into 3 pi there pi times, and 3 goes into 6 there 2 times. So now we can just simply find the sign of pi over 2. Well, the sign of pi over 2, according to your identity sheet there, or on your unit circle there, is 1. All right, so then let's see if that does, if the sine of pi over 6 plus the pi over 3 equals the sine of pi over 6 plus the sine of pi over 3. So now we're going to check this. Let's do each one of these. So let's first kind of figure out what's the sine of pi over 6 there equal to. Well, looking at my identity sheet, I can go down to pi over 6 and go up there to sine there, and I see, oh, it's 1/2. And then the sine of pi over 3, well, the sine of pi over 3 there, if I look at pi over 3 and I go up the sine there, they match there at the square root of 3 over 2. So now, if I go ahead, they already have a common denominator, so I can just simply add my numerators, 1 plus the square root of 3. Well, 1 plus the square root of 3 does not give me, it does not give me 2. Square root of 3 is about, I think it's like 1.7. Let me figure it out real quick here. Square root of 3 there. Yeah, about 1.73. And then if you kind of think about that, 1 plus 1.73 is 2.73, and 2.73 divided by 2 is not going to give me a nice value there of 1 like this one here is. So are they equal to each other? No, these two are not equal to each other. So no, they do not equal each other, because this value here and this value here are not equal to each other. So you cannot just go ahead and distribute the sign through. Remember what I told you? Sign by itself doesn't mean anything. You can't just distribute it through. You can't do anything with it unless it's got an angle attached to it. So that one doesn't have it there yet. So let's come over here. What does the sine of an angle plus an angle equal? Well, it doesn't equal sine x plus sine y. It equals sine x times cosine y plus cosine x times sine y. So not even close to what we were thinking. So now go ahead and on your identity sheet, on the front side there, at the bottom of that first side there, you want to copy down all these formulas. So you go ahead and you can pause this video right now while people copy these down. This would be a good thing for them to have on their sheet when they're doing their tests. All right, so let's continue on. You have those formulas now. So what you want to do here is says let the cosine of x equals 4/5 and the sine of y equals 5/13. Now you got to be careful with these because Sometimes they're going to ask you to find the cosine of y, or they might say, what's the sine of x? But be careful. See, there's two different angles. It says the cosine of x equals 4/5. It says the sine of y equals 5/13. So the sine of x is not the sine of y. They're not the same thing. They're two different angles. All right. So this one here says find the sine of x here. Well, we know how to do that. We already have our nice Pythagorean identity. We have sine squared x plus cosine squared x equals 1. So I can plug in 4/5 here. And squaring 4/5 there, I get 16/25. I'm going to subtract 16/25 from both sides. And when I do that, I end up getting sine squared x equals 1 minus 16/25. I now need to get a common denominator. My common denominator is going to be 25. I can go ahead and subtract my numerators up there. So I get sine squared x equals 25, doing my numbers, 25 minus 16, there's 9. And then I write down my common denominator. So just like your homework from last night, now you can go ahead and take the square root of both sides. And don't forget the plus or minus in the front. So we get sine x equals square root of 9, there's 3, square root of 25, there's 5. It says that both of those, however, are in the first quadrant. Both x and y are in the first quadrant. So because of that, our sine value in the first quadrant there is it positive or negative? Positive, because we're in the first quadrant. So the sine of x there equals 3/5. All right, cosine of x, we were already given that. And now tangent. If you remember at the top of your identity sheet there, we wrote down at the top of your identity sheet that the tangent there is equal to the sine over the cosine. So what is our sine? Our sine of x here is 3/5. What's our cosine of x? It's 4/5. So now if you remember how to do this, you got a fraction divided by a fraction. So I'm going to take the first fraction. It is division. So division's right there. So if I wanted to write it out, it'd look like this. But to divide is the same thing as to multiply by its reciprocal. So I'm going to write the first fraction down correctly, and I'm going to flip the second fraction. Don't flip the first fraction there. That will give you the wrong answer. So then here you can either multiply your numerators and multiply your denominators, or you can go ahead and reduce your answer down as you go. So if I reduce my answer down as I go, I'm going to cross these out. 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 5 once, multiply straight across. I get 3/4. Or I could have written down 15/20 and then reduce that down to 5 goes into the 15 3 times, 5 goes into 20 there 4 times. So however you want to do that, but my tangent there is 3/4. So now I've got these three solutions. All right, we haven't done anything with the y's, so let's look at the y's here next. So on this one here, we've got the sine of y. Well, we were given the sine of y in the problem up there. It says it's 5/13. The cosine of y, we're going to use that same formula that we used yesterday. Cosine squared y, sine squared y plus cosine squared y equals 1. My sine there is 5/13. We're going to square that. We're looking for cosine this time. So 5/13, when I square that, I get 25 over 169. We're going to go ahead and subtract 25 169ths from both sides. So we end up getting 1 minus 25 over 169. Common denominator there is going to be 169. So now I can go ahead and subtract. I've got 169 there minus 25, so working with the numerators up there. And I get 144 all over the common denominator, 169. Now I have to get rid of the squared. How do we get rid of the squared? Take the square root of both sides. When I take the square root of both sides there, on the left-hand side, I'm going to get cosine y. The right side there, I'm going to get square root of 144 is 12. Square root of 169 there is 13. All right, but coming back up here, it says they're in the first quadrant. Is cosine positive or negative in the first quadrant? Look on your unit circle if you can't remember. It is going to be positive, so the cosine of y there equals 12/13. All right, tangent. Well, tangent has a nice formula at the top of your identity sheet. It tells you what your tangent there is. So that is a sine of our angle, which is y, divided by the cosine of our angle, which is y. So we have a sine of y, it's 5/13. We have the cosine of y, it's 12/13. So I'm going to rewrite this. So it's divided by 12/13. But that's the same thing as 5/13 times the reciprocal of the second fraction, 13/12. And if I want, I can go ahead and reduce anything down with the tops and the bottoms here. So here's a bottom and a top. 13 goes into 13 once, 13 goes in 13 once. Multiply across, and I get 5/12. So there's my tangent of y. All right, so now that we got all the pieces, let's come over here. Now you got to think about what secant here means. Secant, again, at the top of your identity sheet, it says secant is 1 over the cosine of the angle. So what's my cosine of x? Oh, my cosine of x, I was given it's 4/5. So 1 over 4/5. But really, 1 over 4/5 is really 1 times the reciprocal, which is 5/4. So simply, if you just want to kind of think through that, secant is the reciprocal of the cosine. What's the cosine? 4/5. So what's your secant? 5/4. So you don't even have to do the math on it, but there it is given it to you as well. So we can kind of do the same thinking with cosecant. Cosecant, but this time it's of y, is 1 over the sine of y. So we could do the math, or we could look up there, oh, the sine of y there is 5/13. The cosecant and sine there have reciprocal relationships. So if the sine there is 5/13, what's the cosecant of y? 13/5. All right, so if you didn't know that, could we do the math out on this? Sure. We could do 1 divided by 5/13, which is the same thing as 1 times the reciprocal, 13/5. Multiplying, we get 13/5. Same thing, reciprocal relationships, cosecant and sine. Again, those are written at the top of your identity sheet. So if you have them there, it makes your life really easy. Now I'm going to go back because we found the tangent of y, I believe, on the last page. The tangent of y we found out to be 5/12. So tangent of y was 5/12. So cotangent also has a reciprocal relationship with tangent. So if your tangent of y is 5/12, what's your cotangent of y? You just flip it. What do you get? You get 12/5. Could we have done the same math out there for the cosecant as we did like the cosecant and secant? Sure, but as soon as you see the pattern and you understand it, just go ahead and write its value down. You don't have to do all that other math up there if you already understand the relationship. That's what we want you to see. What's the relationship? Tangent and cotangent have reciprocal relationships. So if tangent is 5/12, then the cotangent is 12/5. All right, so the next part here, we're going to go ahead and add some of these together.